The night was cold, colder than any night in weeks. Snow covered the ground in thick layers, and the forest around the cabin was silent. Only the wind made sound, howling against the wooden walls. Inside the small cabin, a human named Daniel sat alone near the fire. He was tired from a long day of chopping wood and fixing tools. He thought the night would pass quietly, but fate had other plans. At first, Daniel thought he heard the wind make a strange sound. Then he froze. It was not the wind. It was soft, weak, almost broken. It was a cry, the kind of cry that pulled at the heart. A baby's cry. He stood up quickly. His heart raced as the sound grew clearer. Who would leave a baby in this frozen night? He opened the cabin door. The cold air rushed in, sharp and biting. His breath turned white in front of him. He looked down at the snowy path. His eyes widened. There on the ground was a small bundle wrapped in worn cloth. The bundle moved, and the sound came again. A weak cry, but Daniel saw more. Beside the bundle lay a figure, thin, shaking, almost collapsing in the snow. It was not human. Her skin glowed faintly in the moonlight, pale silver with faint blue lines running across. Her arms, her hair was long and tangled, her face showed exhaustion and pain. In her weak arms she pushed the bundle toward him. Her lips whispered something, but the words were broken. Daniel knelt quickly. His hands trembled as he picked up the bundle. Inside was a baby, alien but fragile. Its skin was soft and light purple, its tiny eyes half open, gasping for warmth. The baby clung weakly to the cloth. Daniel's heart tightened. He had seen many strange things in life, but nothing like this. The alien mother tried to stand, but her legs failed. She fell forward into the snow. Daniel caught her arm before her face hit the ground. She was lighter than he expected, weak from hunger and cold. Her eyes met his. They were not human eyes. They shined like glass under the moon, filled with fear and silent begging. For a moment, Daniel froze. He knew what this meant. Everyone in town was told never to help wandering aliens. The soldiers called them dangerous. Some even said they were spies. To hide one was a crime, to feed one was treason. But looking at the mother and her child, Daniel felt no fear. He only felt pity. The baby cried louder, and Daniel's decision was made. He pulled the mother up with one arm and carried the baby with the other. The cold bit into his skin, but he did not stop. He pushed the cabin door shut with his foot, locking the world outside. Inside, the fire still burned. Daniel rushed to the hearth. He laid the baby close to the heat, but not too near. He grabbed a wool blanket and wrapped it around the small body. The baby's cries softened, its breathing steadier. Daniel's chest loosened with relief. The mother collapsed on the wooden floor. Her chest rose and fell heavily. Her hands reached out as if searching for her child. Daniel gently placed the baby into her arms. She held it tightly even in her weakness. A tear slipped from her silver eyes. Her voice came again, faint, broken. But Daniel understood. "Safe," she whispered. Daniel felt a weight in his chest. "Safe," she said. "Safe with him." He looked at them both. 2 lives dropped on his doorstep in the dead of night. 2 strangers the world wanted him to reject. He stared at the door, knowing soldiers often patrolled the area. If they found out, his life would change forever. But the baby made a small sound, almost a sigh, and Daniel knew. He could not send them back into the snow. He could not walk away. Not tonight, not ever. The wind howled again outside, sharp and cruel. But inside the cabin, the fire burned warmer than before. Daniel sat beside them, silent, watching, his mind full of questions. Who was she? Why did she come here? Who chased her? And why, out of all doors, did she choose his? The answers would come later. For now, he had only one choice. He would keep them alive until morning, and morning would bring danger. The night had begun with silence. Now it had turned into something else. A cry at midnight had opened a door to destiny. The cabin was silent except for the crackling fire. The snowstorm outside pressed against the windows, but inside the small wooden house a different kind of storm was rising. Daniel sat on a stool near the hearth, his eyes moving between the weak alien mother and her fragile child. The baby, now wrapped in a wool blanket, breathed softly. The color on its small face was still pale, but the fire's warmth gave it life again. The mother lay on the wooden floor, her head against the blanket Daniel had folded for her. Her breathing was heavy but slower now. She was not dead, not yet, but she was close to breaking. Daniel moved quickly. He fetched a kettle of water and placed it over the fire. He pulled out the little food he had left: half a loaf of bread, a small jar of milk, and some dried meat. It was not much. He had been saving it for himself, but when he looked at the mother and her child, he knew it would not be enough for them. The baby stirred, making small sounds. Daniel hesitated. He had never cared for an alien before. He was not even sure what this child could eat, but instinct guided him. He warmed the milk slowly, poured it into a cup, and dipped a piece of clean cloth into it. He pressed the damp cloth gently to the baby's lips. At first, the baby turned its head weakly, but then its mouth latched onto the cloth, sucking the milk. A small relief filled Daniel's chest. He had done something right. The baby drank slowly, its little hands clinging to the edge of the blanket. The alien mother's eyes opened halfway. She watched through tired lids, her gaze fixed on the sight of a human feeding her child. Her lips trembled. She wanted to speak, but her voice was broken. Daniel leaned closer. "Don't try to talk," he said softly. "Save your strength." For a moment, silence stretched between them, a silence filled with mistrust and fear. Humans and aliens were not known for peace. Too many stories of betrayal, too many scars. Yet here, in this cabin, something different was taking root. The kettle whistled. Daniel poured hot water into a bowl and dipped the bread into it. He broke the soft piece and placed it near her lips. She shook her head weakly, almost refusing. Her pride or fear made her hesitate. But Daniel pressed gently. "You need this," he said, "or the cold will take you." Finally, she opened her mouth slightly. He fed her small pieces slowly. She chewed weakly, but each bite gave her a little more life. A faint color returned to her silver skin. The fire glowed brighter, filling the cabin with warmth. Daniel sat back for a moment. He stared at them, this broken mother and child, realizing his cabin no longer belonged only to him. It had become a shelter, a refuge, a secret. Then outside, a sound broke the stillness. Daniel froze, boots crunching in the snow. Voices carried through the storm. Soldiers. The mother's eyes widened with terror. Her body shook. She pulled her baby close, whispering something in a strange language. Her fear was raw, desperate. Daniel's chest tightened. He stood, walked to the window, and peered through the small crack in the wood. Two figures moved past, torches in hand. Their armor glinted faintly in the snow. Their voices were sharp. "Tracks here, they came this way," one of them said. Daniel's heart pounded. He turned to the mother. Her eyes begged him for something. She could not say trust. Her lips formed a single word in broken English: "Hide." Daniel nodded. He picked up a heavy rug and lifted the trapdoor to his cellar. It was small, dark, meant for food storage, but it would be enough. He motioned. Quickly, the mother struggled to her feet, holding her child close. Daniel helped her down the ladder. She clutched the baby against her chest as if the world would tear it away. He lowered the rug back down just as the knock came, loud and harsh. The wooden door shook under the force. Daniel's breath caught. The voices outside demanded, "Open up. We're checking every home." Daniel wiped sweat from his brow and forced himself to move calmly. He opened the door slightly. The freezing wind rushed in. The two soldiers stood there, torches in hand, their faces stern. "We tracked something here," one of them said. "Have you seen anyone?" Daniel's eyes met theirs, his voice steady though his heart raced. "Only the snow and the wolves," he said. "Nothing more." The soldiers narrowed their eyes. One stepped inside, scanning the cabin. His boots thudded on the wooden floor. Daniel's hands clenched. The fire crackled. The bread on the table gave off its smell. The soldier's eyes moved across the room, pausing near the rug that hid the cellar. Daniel's stomach twisted, but the soldier only grunted. He looked back. Nothing here. The other soldier spat into the snow. Keep moving. They left, their torches fading into the storm. Daniel closed the door and leaned against it. His chest rose and fell heavily. He walked to the rug and lifted it. The mother's eyes shined from the darkness, wide with fear. He reached his hand down, pulling her up gently. She trembled, still clutching her baby. When they were back near the fire, Daniel spoke quietly. "You're safe here." His words were simple, but they carried weight. The mother looked at him, her lips forming a single word again. "Safe," she whispered, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Trust, fragile but real. A fire had been lit, not only in the hearth, but in the bond between a human and two helpless lives. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, a new promise was born. Daniel knew his life had changed forever. Morning came slowly. The storm outside had calmed, but the snow still lay heavy on the ground. The cabin felt quiet. Too quiet. Daniel woke to the sound of soft breathing near the fire. The alien mother was still asleep, her arms locked tightly around her baby as if she feared the world would steal it away. Daniel rubbed his eyes and stood. His body was sore from the night's tension. He walked to the table and looked at the small amount of food he had left. Half a loaf of bread, a little milk, a strip of dried meat. That was all. He frowned. His supplies had been meant to last a week. Now with 3 mouths it might not last 2 days. The baby stirred. Its small cry filled the cabin. The mother woke instantly, her silver eyes wide. She rocked the child gently, whispering in her strange tongue. But the cry did not stop. It was not the cry of fear. It was hunger. Daniel stepped closer. He saw the mother's face twist with pain. She looked at the bread on the table but then turned her head away. Her pride fought with her need. She was a stranger in a hostile land. Asking for food from a human could feel like surrender. But her baby's cries tore her heart apart. Daniel picked up the bread, broke off a piece and placed it near her hands. "Eat," he said softly. "For the child." The mother hesitated. Her thin fingers shook as she reached for it. She took only a small bite and then placed the rest. Against the baby's lips, Daniel's eyes widened. He had expected her to eat. Instead, she chewed a little and passed it to her child. The baby sucked gently, calming. The sight struck Daniel's heart like a hammer. She was starving, but she chose her baby first. Daniel turned away, hiding the knot in his throat. He grabbed his coat and pulled on his boots. "I'll get more food," he muttered. "Stay here, keep quiet." The mother looked at him with frightened eyes, her voice weak but clear. "Danger," she whispered. "Outside, danger." Daniel nodded. "I know," he said. "But if we don't eat, we die here." He stepped out into the frozen forest. The air was sharp and heavy. He carried his axe, not only for wood but for protection. Tracks in the snow showed the by. Soldiers had passed again, searching. Their boots had pressed deep into the ground. He followed another path, one that led to the river, hoping for fish or anything that could keep them alive. Hours passed, his hands numb from cold, but luck finally came. A trap he had set earlier held a rabbit, small but enough for a meal. Daniel thanked the forest quietly and carried it back. When he returned, the cabin was still standing. The fire had burned low, but the mother sat close to it, rocking her baby gently. Her eyes lit with relief when she saw him return. Daniel skinned the rabbit quickly and placed the meat on the fire. The smell filled the cabin, warm and rich. The baby sniffed the air and made a small sound, hungry again. Daniel gave the first cooked piece to the mother. She hesitated, looking at him as if asking permission. Daniel nodded firmly. "Eat," he said. "This time you first." Her lips trembled. She took the piece slowly, chewing carefully. A faint color returned to her cheeks. Then she held a tiny bit near the baby's mouth. The child chewed weakly, its small teeth breaking the meat. Daniel's chest warmed at the sight. For the first time, silence returned to the cabin. Not the silence of fear, but of peace. The baby's cries had stopped, replaced by soft sounds of content. The mother leaned back, closing her eyes. A tear slipped down her cheek. Daniel did not ask why. He already knew. But peace did not last. As night fell, strange lights moved again in the forest. Daniel stood at the window, his jaw tight. Torches flickered between the trees. The soldiers had not given up. They were hunting something or someone. Daniel turned to the mother. She sensed it too. Her eyes were wide, her arms tight around the child. She whispered something he did not understand, but the meaning was clear. "Fear," he whispered back. "Don't worry, I won't let them take you." His voice was steady, but inside he was uncertain. What power did one man have against soldiers? Yet when he looked at the baby, its small hands reaching out, he knew. He could not give them up, not to hunger, not to the soldiers, not to fate. The night deepened. Shadows filled the cabin. Hunger might have been quiet for now, but danger had grown louder. Daniel sat with his axe resting against the wall, watching the fire, watching the door. The alien mother watched him too, her eyes no longer filled with only fear. There was something else, something fragile but strong, trust. And in the flicker of the fire, Daniel realized this was no longer just survival. This was the start of something larger, a choice that would lead him into the shadows of hunger, of danger, and perhaps of destiny. The forest was silent, too silent. Daniel sat near the fire, but his ears stayed, sharp, listening to every sound outside. The alien mother lay close to the hearth, her baby resting against her chest. Both were asleep, but their sleep was fragile, filled with fear even in dreams. Then it came again. The sound he had heard before, the crunch of boots on snow, low voices carried by the wind. Daniel stood quickly and went to the window. Pulling back a corner of the old curtain, his stomach sank. More soldiers. Torches flickered between the trees, moving slowly, carefully. They were not lost. They were hunting. A sharp voice cut through the cold. "Tracks this way, don't let them escape." Daniel's hand gripped the edge of the window. His breath clouded the glass. He turned to the mother. She was awake now, her silver eyes wide. She clutched her baby tightly, whispering words Daniel did not understand. But the meaning was clear. "Fear," he whispered. "Quiet, stay low," and quickly lifted the rug that covered the trapdoor. He motioned for her to climb down into the cellar. She hesitated, her eyes searching his. It was not easy for her to trust a human, but the heavy boots outside grew louder, closer. Finally, she obeyed, clutching her child. She descended the small ladder and Daniel pulled the rug back into place. The knock came, sharp and loud. The wooden door shook under the force. Daniel's heart pounded. He forced his face calm and opened the door slowly. 2 soldiers stood there, snow covering their boots. One held a torch, the other carried a rifle. Their eyes scanned the cabin quickly. "We followed signs of movement," one said. "Did you see anyone pass by?" Daniel met their gaze without flinching. "Only wolves and shadows," he replied, his voice steady though his chest tightened. The soldiers stepped inside. Heat from the fire touched their armor. Their boots thudded on the wooden floor. One of them walked around the cabin, eyes scanning the table, the bread, the blanket by the fire. Daniel's hands curled into fists. The soldier paused near the rug that hid the cellar. His boot pressed against it. For a moment, Daniel's blood froze. Every muscle in his body screamed to act, but the soldier only grunted, kicked the rug aside slightly, then moved on. His eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. The other soldier sniffed the air. "Strange," he muttered. "Smells like something else here." Daniel forced a dry laugh. "Rabbit stew. What else would it be?" He pointed at the pot near the fire. The smell of cooked meat still lingered. The soldier glanced at it and shrugged. Finally, after long silence, the leader spoke. "If you see anything, report at once. Harboring outsiders is treason." His words were sharp. He stared into Daniel's eyes as if searching for a crack in his calm. Daniel nodded slowly. Of course. The soldiers lingered a moment longer, then turned and left. The sound of boots faded into the forest, torches disappeared into the dark. Daniel closed the door and leaned against it. His chest rose and fell heavily, sweat dripped down his neck. He pulled the rug aside and opened the trapdoor. The mother's eyes shined in the dark. She held her baby tight, trembling. When Daniel offered his hand, she took it weakly. He helped her climb back up. She collapsed near the fire, her body shaking. She whispered one word, "Safe." Though her voice cracked with fear, Daniel knelt beside her, his eyes serious. "They won't stop," he said. "They'll keep searching. They know someone is hiding." Her eyes filled with tears, she whispered broken words. "They want my child. They never stop." Daniel's jaw tightened. Now he understood. This was not just random soldiers patrolling. This was a hunt. And the prize was the small baby she held. The baby stirred, making soft sounds, unaware of the danger. Outside, Daniel watched the child's tiny fingers clutch its mother's clothing. His heart hardened. He had lived alone for years, avoiding war, avoiding sides. But now, war had walked into his cabin, and he had chosen, that night, Daniel did, not sleep. He sat near the door, his axe in his hand, his eyes fixed on the dark window. Every whisper of wind made him tense. Every crack of wood made his breath pause. The alien mother watched him too, her fear slowly changing into something else. A fragile trust, as dawn touched the snow. Daniel spoke. His voice was low but firm. "You can't stay here. They'll come back, and next time they'll tear this place apart." The mother's lips parted. Her eyes begged him. "Where? Go?" she asked weakly. Daniel looked out at the endless forest, the mountains beyond. He knew of a path, dangerous but hidden, away through the old mines, forgotten by soldiers. It was risky, but safer than waiting here. He turned back to her, his voice steady. "We leave tonight." The fire flickered, shadows danced across the walls. Outside, the hunters searched the snow. But inside, a choice had been made. Daniel would not hand them over. He would not walk away. The hunters were closing in, but so was Daniel's resolve. The day passed in heavy silence. Daniel worked outside, chopping more wood, his eyes always scanning the forest for movement. The alien mother stayed inside the cabin, rocking her baby, her thin arms trembling whenever the wind carried distant sounds. By evening, the snow glowed faintly under the pale moon. The fire crackled in the cabin, warm but unable to chase away the tension that hung between them. Daniel placed 2 bowls of rabbit stew on the table. The smell filled the small room, but the mother hesitated before touching it. "You need food," Daniel said firmly, sliding the bowl toward her. "You can't run if you don't eat." She lowered her head, her silver eyes staring into the flames. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she whispered, her voice fragile but heavy. "You don't know, human. If you help me, you die too." Daniel leaned back, his face calm but curious. "Then tell me," he said softly. "Tell me why soldiers hunt you. Tell me why you left your child at my door." The words seemed to cut her. She held her baby closer, pressing her lips to its head. The baby cooed softly, unaware of the danger surrounding them. Finally, her voice broke the silence again. "I was property," she said, the word falling from her mouth like poison. "Branded, useless." She pulled the sleeve of her torn clothing down, revealing her arm. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Burned into her silver skin was a mark, a brand shaped like a cruel symbol. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had heard rumors, aliens taken as slaves, stripped of names, called tools or failures, but seeing it carved into her flesh was different. It was real. It was cruel. "They took me," she continued, her voice shaking. "Made me clean, carry, obey. But then, I had a child not supposed to. They said, he is mistake. her eyes filled with tears. But they saw. His eyes. They want him. They say he is special. Daniel looked at the baby. The child's eyes glowed faintly, soft purple light flickering in the dim cabin. He felt a chill crawl down his spine. Special how? He asked. The mother shook her head. Not no. Only know they want him. Not me, not us. Only him. They say he is future. They take children like him for experiments. Her voice cracked at the last word. She buried her face in the baby's blanket, trembling. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He thought of the soldiers who had searched his cabin, of their cold eyes, of their boots pressing against the rug. They had not been hunting blindly. They had been hunting this child. For a long time, Daniel said nothing. He stared at the fire, his fists clenched. His life had been simple before. He kept to himself, worked the land, stayed out of trouble. He never thought he would be dragged into someone else's war, but now he understood. This was no longer about chance, it was about choice. The mother looked at him, her eyes filled with desperation. You save us once, she whispered, but you cannot again. Leave us in forest. We run. You live. Daniel shook his head sharply. No. His voice was steady, his decision firm. If you go alone, they'll find you before sunrise. You'll die, and your baby with you. He leaned closer, his eyes burning with quiet resolve. You're not running alone anymore, not while I'm here. Her lips parted in shock. For a long moment she only stared at him, searching his face for lies. But she found none. His words were simple, but they carried more strength than the walls around them. The baby stirred, letting out a soft cry. The mother hushed it, rocking gently. Daniel stood and pulled out old maps from a drawer. He spread them on the table, his finger tracing the mountains. There's a path through the old mines. Soldiers won't risk it. Too unstable. But if we move at night, we can reach the valley. There are farms there, maybe even safe houses. She stepped closer, holding her child, her voice weak but hopeful. You help us run? Daniel looked at her, not with pity but with determination. No, he said firmly. I'll help you live. Silence filled the cabin, not empty silence, but heavy with unspoken promise. The fire popped, shadows danced on the walls. Outside, the wind howled, reminding them the world was not safe. But inside, a fragile bond had turned into something stronger. For the first time, the alien mother lowered her head in gratitude. A tear slipped down her cheek. She whispered in her broken English, "Thank you, human." Daniel nodded once. His eyes returned to the door, to the snow beyond. The hunters would come again, stronger, faster. He knew it. But now he also knew he was no longer just protecting strangers. He was protecting a mother and her child, and perhaps something far greater. The cabin was no longer safe. Daniel knew it. The alien mother knew it. Even the baby, restless and uneasy, seemed to sense the danger that pressed closer with every passing hour. That night, after the mother's secret was revealed, Daniel sat by the fire with old maps spread. Across the table, his finger traced the lines of the mountains, the frozen rivers, the abandoned mines. He remembered stories of men who had tried to cross those tunnels and never returned, but soldiers feared them, and that fear made the path the only hope. The alien mother sat nearby, her child cradled against her chest. She watched Daniel's every move, her silver eyes reflecting the glow of the fire. She did not speak much, but her silence was not cold. It was trust, fragile but growing. Daniel packed slowly. He placed dried meat, bread, and the little milk. Left into a sack, he added matches, rope, and an old lantern. His axe rested against the wall. He had carried it for years. Now it would serve as weapon as much as tool. The mother whispered softly in her own language, rocking her baby to sleep. Daniel listened without understanding, but he could feel the emotion in her voice: grief, love, fear, and hope. It reminded him of lullabies he once heard in his own home long ago before the wars. At midnight, Daniel stood. He pulled on his heavy coat, wrapped a scarf around his neck, and slung the sack over his shoulder. He looked at her. "We move now," he said firmly. She nodded, her thin frame trembling as she rose. The baby stirred, making a soft cry, but she hushed it quickly. Daniel opened the door. The cold slapped his face. The world outside was dark and white, snow stretching endlessly. Shadows of trees stood like silent guards. They stepped out quietly, Daniel leading, his boots pressing deep into the snow. He knew every sound mattered. Every crunch could betray them. He guided her toward the narrow trail that disappeared into the forest. The silence of the night was broken only by the wind, but soon faint echoes reached them. Torches flickered in the distance. Soldiers. Their voices carried through the cold, barking orders, searching. Daniel clenched his jaw. He quickened his pace, guiding the mother deeper into the trees. The baby whimpered softly. The mother pressed her lips to its head, whispering, "Shh, safe, safe." The trail grew steeper, the snow deeper, the forest thinned, revealing the first cliffs of the mountains. Daniel paused, pointing toward the black mouth of a cave in the distance. "There," he whispered. "That's the entrance to the mines." But danger was close. Behind them, the sound of dogs barked. Sharp and vicious, Daniel's chest tightened. Soldiers had brought trackers. He grabbed the mother's arm. "Run!" he hissed. They stumbled through the snow, breath turning into clouds. The baby cried louder now, the sound piercing the silence. Daniel's heart pounded. He turned and saw torchlight breaking through. The trees, shadows moving fast, the cave loomed ahead, dark and silent. Daniel pushed the mother inside. "Go!" he urged. He followed, gripping his axe. The air inside was colder, damp. The walls dripped with ice. Their footsteps echoed. Deeper and deeper they went, the light of the lantern flickering. Daniel stopped and listened. The dogs' barks grew. Louder, soldiers' voices shouted orders. They had followed the track straight to the cave. The mother's face was pale. Her arms shook as she held her child. Daniel placed a finger to his lips. "Quiet," he whispered. He moved to the wall, scraping snow to cover their footprints as much as possible. Then he pulled them into a side tunnel, narrow and hidden. Torches lit the cave entrance. Soldiers entered, their boots striking stone. The echo carried deep into the mine. "They're here," a voice shouted. Daniel's pulse raced. He held the mother close against the wall. The baby whimpered. Daniel prayed to any power that would listen. But the soldiers' steps moved deeper, their voices growing faint as they followed the main tunnel. Daniel exhaled slowly. He turned to the mother. "We go this way," he whispered, pointing down the side tunnel. The lantern's dim light revealed rough paths, wooden beams long broken. The ground was uneven, dangerous, but it was the only chance. They moved carefully. The baby pressed close to the mother's chest. Daniel held the lantern high, guiding their steps. The tunnel twisted and narrowed, sometimes forcing them to crouch. Hours passed like this, step by step through darkness. Daniel's muscles ached. His throat was dry, but he did not stop. The mother stumbled often, but each time, Daniel steadied her. Her strength was fading, but her will was not. She clung to her child as if it was the only thing keeping her alive. Finally, the tunnel opened into a wide chamber. A hole in the ceiling let moonlight pour in. It was dim, but enough to see the snow-covered valley beyond. Daniel let out a long breath. "We made it," he whispered. The mother's eyes filled with tears. She looked at him, her voice trembling. "Safe?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "Not yet, but safer than before." He set the lantern down. His eyes scanned the alley. "We rest for a moment, then move. They won't stop. Not until they have him." The baby stirred again, but this time its eyes glowed faintly. Purple light shimmering. Daniel stared at it. His heart tightened. Now he understood why soldiers hunted. This child was no mistake. This child was something more, something powerful. Fire of resolve burned in Daniel's chest. He turned to the mother, his voice steady. I don't care who they send, I won't let them take him. And in that frozen chamber, among shadows and ice, the escape was no longer just survival. It had become a fight for something greater. The frozen cave chamber was silent. Only the faint drip of water echoed off the stone. Daniel sat near the edge where moonlight shone through the broken ceiling. His breath came out in heavy clouds. His axe rested across his knees. He listened to every sound, waiting for the hunters to return. The alien mother leaned against the wall, her baby asleep in her arms. Her silver eyes glistened in the pale light. She looked at Daniel as though seeing him for the first time, not just as a human but as something different, something she could trust. For hours, they rested, but rest did not ease the weight in Daniel's chest. He knew soldiers would not stop. They would track them again, they always did. But something inside him had changed. He no longer thought of them as strangers he had stumbled upon. They were his to protect now. When the baby stirred, Daniel noticed its eyes glowing again, brighter this time. The light shimmered across the cave walls. The mother whispered quickly in her own tongue, then turned to Daniel, her voice trembling. He cannot hide forever. Power grows, they will find. Daniel studied the child, his jaw tight. Then we'll make sure they don't take him, he said. His voice carried no hesitation. The mother's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. You risk life for us, why? Daniel stared into the moonlight for a long moment. His voice was low, almost distant. Because once, I failed. He swallowed hard. War took my family. Soldiers knocked on my door. I did nothing, and they were gone. He closed his eyes. This time, I don't walk away. Silence followed, heavy and full of meaning. The mother reached out slowly, her trembling hand touching his arm. She whispered, Then, we are not alone. Before dawn, Daniel led them down the tunnel that opened into the valley. The air outside was bitter, but fresh. Snow stretched far and wide. The first colors of morning painted the sky, soft orange and pale blue. They moved, carefully, their footsteps hidden by fresh snow. Daniel guided them toward the old farms he remembered, abandoned years ago. Perhaps one still had shelter, perhaps one still had life, but behind them danger returned. Distant torches glowed on the mountain ridge. Soldiers had found the trail again. Their voices echoed faintly through the valley. Daniel cursed under his breath. They were faster than he hoped. Go, he urged the mother. Keep moving. He turned back, gripping his axe. His breath burned in his lungs. He would hold them if he had to. He would not let them touch her child. But the mother shook her head, fear and defiance in her eyes. No, she whispered. Not leave you. She held her baby close, her body trembling but her spirit unbroken. The baby woke, its glowing eyes shining brighter than before. The light grew, soft but strong, spilling into the valley. Daniel stared in awe. The child's small hand stretched upward and the torches in the distance flickered. One by one they went dark. Soldiers shouted in confusion, their voices breaking the night. The mother gasped, clutching her baby. Her tears fell freely. He is gift, she whispered, not curse. Daniel's heart pounded. For the first time he understood this child was not just special to her, not just hunted for power. This child was a light that could break darkness, perhaps even change everything. The soldiers hesitated. On the ridge, some dropped their torches, fear spreading among them. Daniel seized the chance. Now, he hissed. He pulled the mother along, and together they hurried across the valley. They reached an old farmhouse, its roof broken but walls still standing. Daniel pushed the door open, guiding them inside. The wind howled outside, but here they had cover. The mother sank onto the floor, holding her baby close. Her shoulders shook, but this time it was not from fear. It was from relief. She looked at Daniel, her voice soft, almost breaking. You save us again and again. Why? Daniel knelt beside her, his face steady. Because no one else would, because sometimes one choice changes everything. The baby looked at him, its glowing eyes calm. For the first time, it smiled. A small, fragile smile, but enough to break the weight of the world. Outside, dawn finally broke. The first rays of sunlight poured. Across the valley, golden and warm, the long night had ended, a new day had begun. Daniel sat near the broken window, watching the horizon, his axe still within reach, his heart heavy but stronger than before. He knew soldiers would return. He knew danger would come again. But he also knew something else. He was no longer alone. The alien mother whispered softly, her voice filled with quiet gratitude. "We found family." Daniel looked at her, at the child in her arms, and for the first time in years he allowed himself a small smile. "Yes," he said, "family." And as the sun rose higher, melting the frost, Daniel felt something he thought he had lost forever. Hope. A helpless, hungry, alien mother had left her baby at his door, but he had opened that door and in doing so had changed all of their lives.